was a cheater. Those were his words, not yours, not mine. His. Kevin Owens said it with fire in his eyes and fury in his voice, and he meant every single syllable. Here is the thing about Kevin Owens. He is one of the best talkers this business has ever seen. When he speaks, the room goes quiet. When he is angry, you feel it. When he calls someone out, you lean in. He has built an entire career on passion, on intensity, on never backing down from a fight. He is a believable fighter and a brilliant performer. If you are already feeling this energy, hit the hype feature and hype this video right now. It helps a ton. He makes you care about the outcome of every match he is involved in, and he makes you care about the story long after the match is over. But here is the uncomfortable truth that Kevin Owens will never say out loud. One, he does not just call one person a cheater once, he has made it something close to a full-time occupation. He has built a list of names, 10 wrestlers he has publicly and passionately accused of wronging him, cheating him, and stealing from him. And when you go through that list one name at a time, a pattern emerges. A pattern so consistent and so clear that it becomes impossible to ignore once you have noticed it. Kevin Owens does not raise the cheating accusation when someone breaks the rules in a way that genuinely costs him. He raises it when he loses. He raises it when his own plan collapses. He raises it when the match does not go the way he needed it to go, and he needs a story that explains the result without placing the blame anywhere near himself. His definition of cheating has also expanded dramatically over time. Or early in his career, cheating meant foreign objects and eye rakes, things you could point to on a camera replay. But over the years, the definition grew considerably. It became favoritism from management. It became executive power weaponized as a refereeing. It became numerical interference from a faction. It became institutional bias baked into the entire company structure. It became the philosophical corruption of a whole industry. By the time you reach the most recent accusation on this list, almost any outcome Kevin Owens does not want can qualify as cheating against him. So today, we are counting down all 10 names, starting with the most recent and working backward through the years. Every number is going to show you the same man. A man who is brilliant, entertaining, passionate, and absolutely incapable of accepting that he was beaten fair and square. Number 10, Cody Rhodes, December 2024. Saturday night's main event returns to live television after a long absence, and Kevin Owens has secured a main event spot challenging for the undisputed WWE Championship. The crowd is enormous. The moment is historic. This is the biggest platform the show has had in decades, and Kevin Owens is standing at its center, which is exactly where he believes he belongs. This is not just a title match. For Kevin Owens, this is the stage he has been telling himself he deserves since before most people in that arena knew his name. He walks into that match with a specific plan. The plan involves a steel chair. He carries that chair into the ring himself with his own 2 hands. Nobody handed it to him through the ropes. Nobody threw it in from outside. No accomplice slid it across the mat. Kevin Owens picked up a steel chair and carried it into the ring with clear, premeditated intent. He was going to use it. He was going to wait for the right moment, hit Cody Rhodes when the referee was out of position, and steal the championship. That was the strategy from before the opening bell. The match shifted in a direction Owens had not prepared for. Cody Rhodes, a competitor whose entire career has been defined by surviving hostile environments and converting adversity into victories, intercepted the chair. And in a burst of competitive desperation, Rhodes used it. He executed his signature cross-Rhodes finishing move directly onto the steel and pinned Owens cleanly in the center of the ring. The referee's hand hit the mat 3 times. Cody retained. What followed was a Kevin Owens pivot of genuinely impressive scale. Before the arena noise had settled, he launched a full platform campaign declaring Cody Rhodes a cheater who could not win without dirty tactics. He told anyone who would listen that he would have left as champion if Rhodes had not relied on illegal, underhanded methods to survive. He positioned himself as the righteous victim of a corrupt golden boy champion who manipulated the environment to steal a match he was losing. Sit with that for a moment. The chair was Kevin Owens' chair. He introduced it. He created the entire situation. The moment his own plan reversed, Cody used the weapon KO had brought into the ring. KO pointed directly at Cody. That is not a post-match excuse. That is deliberate, committed gaslighting performed on millions of people in real time. Now, the audacity of it is almost impressive. What complicated the situation further was Jesse Ventura. The Hall of Famer was at the commentary table as a special guest, and he backed KO up. Ventura stated plainly that whatever Owens had intended, Rhodes was the man who actually used the chair. Call it like it is, Ventura said. The guy who used the chair was Rhodes. That validation from a credible legend delivered on live television gave Kevin Owens the moral permission structure he needed for what came next. After the broadcast ended, Owens attacked Cody Rhodes and hit a package piledriver, one of the most physically dangerous and restricted moves in the sport. He left the champion severely incapacitated on the arena floor. In Kevin Owens' framework, that was not the behavior of a sore loser. That was justice. A wronged man correcting an injustice, the official result had failed to properly address. Vigilante action carried out against a champion who had used a weapon that KO himself had introduced and planned to deploy first. To everyone watching from the outside, a man had introduced a weapon, lost control of it, and then physically punished the person who picked it up. And this was not the first time KO cried cheater when his own scheme had backfired on him. Number 9. Logan Paul, Royal Rumble 2024. Kevin Owens is targeting the United States Championship and its holder Logan Paul. This rivalry had been constructed around one central prop from the very beginning: brass knuckles. Paul had used those knuckles to secure victories throughout his championship reign. He knocked out Ricochet with them. He knocked out Rey Mysterio. The brass knuckles were his personal insurance policy, his cheat code, and everyone watching knew exactly how he operated. The method was well established, and the audience had seen it enough times to understand the pattern completely. When the Royal Rumble match arrived, Paul's outside crew, Austin Theory and Grayson Waller, showed up at ringside right on schedule. Their job was to create distractions and deliver the weapon when Paul needed it. The sequence was completely anticipated. The audience had been primed for it across months of storytelling. This was the narrative rule of threes in action. The trick established once, reinforced a second time, now arriving for its climactic final chapter with the championship on the line. Kevin Owens read the whole play from the start. He intercepted the brass knuckles before Paul could secure them. The crowd erupted. Owens had outsmarted the cheater. He had stolen the script that everyone in the building had memorized. The moment felt like a genuine victory being born in real time, and Owens' ring intelligence was on full display for the entire audience to appreciate. Then he made the choice that defined the entire match. Instead of handing those knuckles to the referee, instead of throwing them out of the ring and wrestling the rest of the contest on a clean and equal footing, he put them on his own fist. He hit Logan Paul with them. He went for the pin. He was already celebrating in his head. The referee caught it. He spotted the knuckles during the count, enforced the rules exactly as written, and disqualified Kevin Owens. Logan Paul retained the championship. The screaming started before the bell had finished echoing. Owens insisted he was cheated. His argument was that Paul had planned to cheat first, which made KO's use of the weapon morally justified retribution rather than a rule violation subject to penalty. Because Paul's original intent was dirty, anything Owens did in response should be judged by a different and more lenient standard. He was acting as the locker room's avenger, delivering the punishment Paul had been escaping for months. The referee's call ignored that entire context, and in ignoring it, the institution of officiating had cheated him. The rulebook does not contain a section for righteous cheating. The official's call was technically and entirely correct. Owens had the knuckles on his hand during a pinfall attempt. That is a disqualification. But Owens's anger overrode his judgment. His sense of righteousness convinced him that this was the moment to punish Paul with the weapon Paul had planned to use. And when that impulse cost him the match, he handed the accountability to the system. Kevin Owens always says he despises shortcuts. He takes them the moment they feel righteous enough to choose. And when they backfire, the system pays the bill. Number 8, the Judgment Day. Payback 2023. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn hold the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championships. Their opponents are Finn Balor and Damian Priest of the Judgment Day. The match is a Steel City street fight, which by design removes disqualifications, legalizes weapons, and opens the entire environment to controlled chaos and creative violence. Owens and Zayn accepted those terms going in. They agreed to compete in that setting. They understood what they were walking into when the stipulation was announced, and they made no objection to competing under those conditions. What they could not fully absorb was the depth of the numbers game that materialized around them as the match developed. Dominic Mysterio, Rhea Ripley, and JD McDonough all arrived at ringside and all became physically involved at calculated moments throughout the contest. The match shifted from a chaotic 2-on-2 brawl into something closer to 5 against 2, in an environment specifically designed to remove any protective rules, standing between the competitors and whatever force the faction wanted to apply. Owens and Zayn fought with genuine determination and refused to give up ground easily. But there is a ceiling on what two people can sustain against 5 in a match with no disqualifications, acting as any kind of deterrent. The Judgment Day won the championships. After the loss, Owens took the microphone and delivered a precise, cold, pointed breakdown of what had actually happened inside that building. He called Balor and Priest cowards who were incapable of winning a straight 2-on-2 match on their own merits. He identified the 5-on-2 numerical advantage with audible contempt. He asked directly how the Judgment Day could call themselves the dominant faction in wrestling when they required a full surrounding support structure just to defeat 2 men competing without any outside help. He categorized their entire approach as cheating through numerical manipulation and organized, systematic cowardice. And here is the important distinction that sets this entry apart from nearly everything else on this list. Kevin Owens was not wrong about this one. The Judgment Day genuinely did use numerical interference to a degree that went well beyond strategic positioning within a relaxed stipulation. The cheating was real. This is one of the rare cases on this list where KO's accusation and objective reality line up without requiring significant distortion or creative reframing. But watch how he handles even a completely legitimate grievance. He does not acknowledge the loss and keep moving. He builds a monument to it. He and Zayn become noble martyrs, defeated by organized cowardice rather than competitors who lost a match in a brutal environment. He turns a genuinely frustrating defeat into a full moral referendum on his opponent's character. Even when Kevin Owens is correct about cheating, the delivery refuses simplicity. He has to be righteous and wronged and morally elevated above the people who beat him. That persistent need for martyrdom is what gradually erodes the credibility of even his most accurate and well-founded claims. Number 7, Roman Reigns. Royal Rumble 2021. Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship in a last man standing match. The rule is simple. Keep your opponent down for a 10 count. Everything else is permitted inside those boundaries. 25 minutes of extreme violence followed. Owens was thrown off a 12-foot platform through tables. He was hit by a golf cart driven by Roman Reigns. He jumped from a forklift elevated approximately 10 feet above the arena floor. He sustained physical burns from structural lighting equipment integrated into the entrance staging area. He absorbed all of that punishment across the full length of the match and kept coming back for more each time. The physical sacrifice he demonstrated was real and genuinely staggering to witness in real time. Late in the match, Owens handcuffed Reigns to a metal lighting structure at the base of the entrance ramp. Reigns was physically restrained to a fixed object and could not reach a standing position. Under last man standing rules, the referee begins the 10 count. If Reigns cannot stand, Kevin Owens wins the Universal Championship. Paul Heyman tried to use a key to open the handcuffs. He could not get them to work. He struggled visibly with the mechanism for an extended and genuinely uncomfortable amount of time with the entire audience watching. During that stretch, the referee stopped counting. A second official was summoned to the area to help manage the situation. Eventually, Reigns was freed, the match continued, and Kevin Owens eventually lost. Afterward, Owens went on media appearances and publicly accused the referee of being paid off by Roman Reigns. He said it without hesitation or ambiguity. He called it the most blatant and systematic corrupt officiating he had encountered in any professional competition in his entire career. He compared it unfavorably to the biased referees he had experienced playing competitive hockey as a child in Canada, and stated that nothing in that context had come close to what he witnessed at the Royal Rumble. He said he had used Reigns' own handcuff trick against him, only to have the entire officiating machine undo his work on direct command from the top of the company. A real-world timing issue, a genuine on-screen botch that the entire global audience witnessed live. Kevin Owens took that moment and constructed a bribery accusation from the raw material of it. He did not search for the simplest or most charitable explanation. He reached for the most dramatic interpretation available and then stated it publicly as if it were established and undeniable fact. Because if the referee was paid off, Kevin Owens was not beaten. He was robbed. And being robbed requires absolutely no honest self-examination about performance or preparation. When the system looks messy and disorganized, Kevin Owens does not simplify the story. He converts it into a conspiracy. Number 6, Shane McMahon, SummerSlam 2017. Kevin Owens holds the United States Championship. The match has a significant and uncomfortable complication built into its structure from the moment it was publicly announced. Shane McMahon, a man with genuine executive authority within the company and an ongoing personal history with Owens already established on television, is the designated special guest referee. The instant that arrangement was made official, Kevin Owens had his next villain assembled and waiting to be deployed. The special guest referee format introduces the possibility of bias as a matter of structural narrative design. The audience expects tension around the official's calls before the first bell rings. During the match itself, contested calls accumulated on camera. Owens believed his shoulder was clearly off the mat before certain 3 counts were completed. He believed the officiating pattern was being deliberately engineered against him throughout the entire contest. His promotional content in the aftermath was some of the most precise and viscerally aggressive television he has ever delivered in his career. He demanded officials with 2 properly functioning eyes. He called Shane McMahon the single worst referee in the history of the company. He framed himself as a legitimate professional athlete being systematically victimized by a vindictive executive who had inherited institutional authority and was actively and personally choosing to deploy it against a hardworking champion who had done nothing to deserve it. That framing, taken on its own, is a relatively standard piece of Kevin Owens' excuse construction. A title match lost, a convenient villain named, a persecution narrative attached cleanly to the result. Familiar material for anyone who has followed his career closely. But the deeper and more significant story story here is what the narrative produced beyond protecting KO's ego from the result of one match. He delivered the conspiracy so consistently and with such emotional precision across the following months that it began genuinely changing the thinking of people in his orbit who had no reason to join his war. Sami Zayn, a performer with his own fully developed moral framework and a long history of being betrayed by the very man now asking for his loyalty, started to see the executive structure through Kevin Owens' lens. He began to believe the institutional level of the company was actually rigged in ways that deserved a response. That belief eventually led Zayn to physically intervene in the Hell in a Cell match between Owens and McMahon, pulling Owens to safety from a dangerous diving elbow off the top of the structure. A man with a completely independent set of values had his behavior fundamentally altered because Kevin Owens' persecution narrative was persuasive enough to reach him across their personal history. Kevin Owens turned a personal coping mechanism into a persuasive argument powerful enough to reshape someone else's judgment entirely. That transforms the cheating accusation from a defensive excuse into something far more calculated and far more dangerous than a simple post-match complaint. And once KO decides the authority figures are out to get him, he uses that belief as an offensive weapon to pull others into his war. Number 5, Goldberg, Fastlane 2017. Kevin Owens holds the Universal Championship. The challenger is Bill Goldberg, a legendary veteran whose entire in-ring identity is constructed around short, explosive bursts of total physical dominance. Owens understands exactly how Goldberg operates and exactly what environmental conditions allow him to be most dangerous. He knows that stalling and psychological disruption can strip away the focused, controlled environment Goldberg needs to perform at his most effective level. So before the bell rings, Owens spends several deliberate minutes pacing outside the ring, refusing to enter, methodically killing the crowd's energy, and using overt psychological stalling to frustrate his opponent and flatten the atmosphere inside the building. When Owens finally signals for the match to begin and steps through the ropes, something he had not factored into his preparation occurs. The entrance music of Chris Jericho fills the arena. Jericho was the man Kevin Owens had brutally and publicly turned on weeks earlier during the deeply emotional Festival of Friendship segment. They had been genuine close friends, and Owens had destroyed that friendship in front of an audience in a way that left no room for ambiguity. Now Jericho was in the building, and the sound of his music carrying through the arena made every person watching understand exactly what that meant. The moment Owens heard that music, he froze. He turned his full body toward the entrance ramp. His attention left the match completely. The referee, responding to the start signal Owens himself had just given, rang the bell. The match was officially underway. Goldberg did not wait for Owens to refocus. He hit the spear. He hit the jackhammer. He pinned Kevin Owens and captured the Universal Championship in 22 seconds. Owens stated he was cheated because the bell rang while his back was turned to his opponent. His argument was that no competent official should start a world championship match when one competitor is clearly distracted by an outside variable. But that argument requires you to ignore the full causal chain of events that existed before that moment. Kevin Owens turned on Chris Jericho, or Kevin Owens created Jericho as an active and deeply motivated enemy, with every reason to seek retribution at the most damaging possible moment. Kevin Owens' extended stalling tactics before the bell had already established a chaotic and distracted environment that made any outside disruption exponentially more effective when it arrived. His own cruelty towards someone who had genuinely cared for him returned in 22 seconds and obliterated his championship reign completely. He set every fire that burned him. He constructed every condition that led to his humiliation. Then he pointed at the smoke as though someone else had started it. KO's story always carries the same theme beneath the surface. Whatever went wrong, the cause lives somewhere entirely outside of himself. Number 4, AJ Styles. Backlash 2017 and the months surrounding it. Kevin Owens holds the United States Championship and has declared himself the new face of America. He is Canadian. He openly despises American audiences at every available opportunity. He tells them they should be grateful he is representing their country because he does it better than any of them ever could, and they should appreciate the privilege. The irony embedded in the title is intentional and thick, and he wears it with visible satisfaction every time he steps in front of a crowd that boos him for it. To protect the reign, he runs United States Championship Open challenges that are not actually open in any meaningful competitive sense. He restricts challengers to local, inexperienced residents of whatever city the event visits that particular week. He specifies geographic limitations explicitly in the Open Challenge announcement. He selects opponents who pose no genuine threat to his title whatsoever. He performs the ritual language of a competitive champion willing to defend openly while carefully engineering the challenger selection to eliminate any real competitive danger. It is a lie assembled entirely from the vocabulary of fairness, delivered with complete conviction every single time. When AJ Styles, a performer with legitimate championship credentials, widespread organic audience support, and a genuine competitive claim to a real title opportunity, steps forward and demands an honest shot. Owens reaches for the accusation that is never further than arm's reach away from him. He says Styles is entitled. However, he claims SmackDown management is cheating him by granting Styles unearned opportunities that were never legitimately competed for through proper channels. He frames Styles' entirely justified championship pursuit as institutional favoritism delivered by a front office that has always preferred certain kinds of management-friendly performers over genuinely hard-working ones, like Kevin Owens. What he is actually doing is protecting himself from the one competitive challenge his reign cannot honestly survive. He knows Styles can beat him. He knows the crowd would receive that result with genuine enthusiasm. He cannot win the comparison on any honest competitive metric, so he attacks the legitimacy of the framework instead. He manufactures conspiracy around the most dangerous challenger he has faced and attempts to make the audience view Styles' opportunity as a rigged gift rather than earned competition. Kevin Owens uses the language of fairness with real force and visible conviction. Meanwhile, he runs deliberately rigged challenges every single week. The distance between what he preaches and what he practices is not subtle. It is structural to who he is. Kevin Owens screams about fairness while controlling every variable within his reach. Number 3, Sami Zayn, Battleground, 2016, and all the years surrounding it. Every other name on this countdown connects to a specific match result, a specific moment that Kevin Owens needed to explain away with a cheating narrative. This one is fundamentally different in character. In other words, this accusation does not respond to a match outcome. It is the emotional foundation of the Kevin Owens character, the first wound, the original grievance that granted him permanent permission to become who he has been ever since. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn go back over a decade before any of this, before WWE, before any major company, any meaningful stage, or any significant audience. They came up through the independent wrestling circuit together, traveling internationally, working in gymnasiums and small buildings in front of limited crowds, building their craft over years of shared sacrifice and genuine mutual investment in each other's success. Their bond was not a television storyline created by a writing room. It was a real history built through time, physical proximity, and a common purpose pursued together across difficult circumstances. When Kevin Owens joined NXT, he arrived on the specific night he stood at ringside and watched Sami Zayn win the NXT Championship. Zayn's greatest achievement in developmental, the moment that validated everything he had worked toward inside that system. His best night in professional wrestling up to that point in his career. Kevin Owens responded by powerbombing him onto the ring apron. He attacked his closest friend on the greatest night of his closest friend's career. The justification he constructed was built entirely as a cheating accusation. Owens said Zayn had been hired before him, pushed before him, reached championship glory before him. He argued that while he was still grinding on independent shows across the world, sacrificing his body to keep his family financially stable, Sami Zayn was collecting spotlight and championship recognition that Kevin Owens believed was rightfully his by any honest measure of merit and hard work. He said Zayn had stolen his moment, his title, and his natural career trajectory. Then he pushed it into the territory that exposes the deepest layer of his psychology. He accused Zayn's natural likability of being an unfair competitive advantage. The organic audience connection Zayn generated, the instinctive underdog sympathy he inspired in crowds without engineering it, the way people rooted for him without needing any prompting or calculated storytelling, all of that was something Owens could not replicate with his confrontational and abrasive personality. In Kevin Owens's framework, so an advantage you cannot counter or take away from someone is the most fundamentally unfair kind there is. This granted him a permanent and renewable justification to betray and use Zayn whenever his own career ambitions required it. Even years later, when they held tag team gold together at WrestleMania, the underlying tension never dissolved. Because the original accusation was never about a real competitive injury. It was about Kevin Owens being constitutionally unable to celebrate someone else's success without converting it into evidence of his own victimhood. Sami Zayn is the mirror Kevin Owens cannot stand to look at clearly. KO handles that by accusing the mirror of theft. Number 2, Ryback, Night of Champions 2015. Kevin Owens challenges Ryback for the Intercontinental Championship. It is one of his first significant main roster title opportunities, and the outcome becomes a meaningful career milestone. Owens wins his first main roster championship, a result he had worked years to achieve across the independent circuit and through WWE's developmental system before reaching this stage. But the finish is not clean, with the referee temporarily out of position and his sightline blocked by the positioning of both competitors. Owens deliberately raked Ryback's eyes, not accidentally, not as a heat of the moment instinctive reaction, with no premeditation behind it, with clear, purposeful intent, using the obstructed could view as deliberate cover to temporarily blind the larger champion and manufacture the opening needed to secure the pinfall. The cameras captured it completely, and the replays confirmed it for anyone watching from any angle in any part of the arena or at home. Every person watching that match saw exactly what had happened inside the ring with their own eyes. Owens walked out as the new Intercontinental Champion, and then in subsequent television appearances, he accused Ryback of being the dirty fighter in their entire rivalry. He painted himself as the technically superior and more intelligent competitor who had been forced to endure the brutal and underhanded fighting style of a larger and less skilled opponent throughout their feud. He delivered an entirely alternative version of events with total conviction, pointing straight into the camera, daring anyone to disagree with him out loud. He was not the cheater in the story he was constructing, or he was the victim who had finally overcome sustained cheating to claim what he deserved all along. Then he added what has become known simply as the cat story, which pushed the entire situation into genuinely unusual territory that nobody in professional wrestling had previously occupied. He stated publicly that one of his primary motivating grievances against Ryback involved a completely off-screen personal incident with no connection to any competitive result whatsoever. Owens claimed he had invited Ryback to his home to watch professional wrestling footage together, and that during that visit, Ryback had accidentally sat on Owens' pet cat. He presented this strange and completely petty story as additional evidence that Ryback was a fundamentally careless and untrustworthy person who could not be given any basic level of respect. He was building a victim narrative from whatever materials were available to him. The eye rake was documented fact visible to millions. The cat story was an absurd personal sidebar with no competitive relevance of any kind. Neither was actually about Ryback. Both were about owning the story and directing audience attention away from what Kevin Owens had done with his own hands inside that ring. From his very first main roster championship win, the cheater label was a weapon, not a description of events, a tool for narrative management. Number 1, John Cena, Elimination Chamber 2015. Kevin Owens' main roster debut, his first official night on the biggest stage in professional wrestling, and the man across from him is John Cena, the most recognizable name in the company and the undisputed franchise player of WWE for over a decade without serious interruption. At this time, Cena was conducting weekly United States Championship Open challenges. Every week he came out and offered a legitimate title shot to any taker, framing it consistently as a veteran's contribution back to the roster and the audience. A fighting champion willing to defend the title openly and on a regular basis. A man publicly committed to elevating the next generation of talent and providing the audience with genuine, competitive entertainment. The crowds received it warmly, and the segment had become reliable appointment television. Kevin Owens walked out and refused the entire premise from the ground up on his first available night. He did not accuse Cena of using a weapon. He did not complain about a biased referee or a manipulated match finish. He accused Cena of cheating the entire professional wrestling business itself. He said the veteran advice was fabricated generosity designed to look like giving while actually functioning as a mechanism of control. He said the open challenges were constructed to maintain the public perception of benevolence while holding the actual institutional grip on power completely unchanged. He argued that Cena's decade of positioning inside WWE was being used to quietly manage who ascended and who remained in place, all while projecting a public face of openness, generosity, and investment in the next generation of talent. He pointed out that he had been wrestling in buildings and arenas across the entire world for longer than Cena had been a polished and marketed product inside this particular machine. So what exactly was Cena in a position to instruct him about the nature of this business and how to conduct himself within it? This was not a match complaint. It was a structural and philosophical critique delivered on his first available night in front of the largest audience he had ever faced in his career. Owens was not angry about a single result or a single moment. He was angry about the entire established hierarchy and the mechanism by which it maintained and perpetuated itself over years and across careers. He saw the open challenges not as genuine generosity, but as a deliberate performance of generosity that reinforced the status quo while appearing to challenge it. He saw Cena not as a giving veteran, but as the most powerful gatekeeper in the building, using a welcoming public face to neutralize genuine competitive threats before they could develop into real challenges to the established order. This framing gave Kevin Owens a worldview that extended far beyond any individual feud or title match. He was not simply a wrestler with a complaint about a result. He was an outsider who had spent years operating outside the machine and had formed strong and detailed conclusions about how it functioned and who it was specifically constructed to serve. That perspective, whether you fully agree with it or not, was immediately compelling when delivered on that stage. It made audiences sit up and question assumptions they had accepted without examination for years. It is why the character worked from the very first first night on the main roster, and it is why it has sustained for a decade at the highest level of the industry. Now let us look at what every name on this list actually reveals about the man who named 10 names, 10 accusations, and the statistical pattern that runs beneath all of them is impossible to ignore once you lay it out clearly. In 8 of those 10 cases, Kevin Owens made his cheating accusation directly after losing a match or failing to capture a championship. Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes, The Judgment Day, Logan Paul, Shane McMahon, Goldberg, AJ Styles, Sami Zayn. In the Ryback case, he cheated to win and then accused Ryback of being dirty anyway as a defensive cover to manage how the audience processed the finish. In 8 out of 10 explicitly documented situations, the cheating accusation follows a loss or a championship failure. This is not the behavior pattern of someone identifying and exposing real systemic corruption. This is a psychological reflex, a deeply conditioned response that fires automatically whenever a result lands against him, and he needs somewhere to redirect the responsibility that is not his own account. That is a real skill, a specific and difficult and genuinely rare skill that most performers in this business could never sustain convincingly for a single storyline, let alone across a full decade of programming at the highest available level. And that skill is precisely why Kevin Owens remains one of the most compelling and watchable characters in modern professional wrestling, regardless of which era or storyline you examine. His worldview is self-serving at its foundation and psychologically fragile at its core, but it consistently forces audiences to engage with questions that do not offer clean or comfortable resolutions. What does fair actually mean in a professional environment where institutional power is not distributed equally among every person on the roster? When does organizational preference for certain performers cross the line into genuine and actionable corruption? Kevin Owens puts those questions into the conversation and refuses to let them be quietly resolved or forgotten. He converts every single loss into a war story worth retelling. He never allows a chapter to close without appending a reason why the outcome was unjust, incomplete, or taken from him before it could be settled. Every failure becomes a new chapter in his ongoing and never-ending case against a universe he believes was specifically and intentionally designed to prevent him from receiving what he has earned. In every defeat that would reduce most characters to irrelevance or silence gets converted by him into usable fuel for the next round of programming and the next campaign he mounts against whoever stands across from him. He is the unreliable narrator of his own career, the prize fighter who is always in the process of being robbed of something he deserved, the boy who cried wolf with such conviction and such regularity that when the actual wolf arrives at the door, the audience cannot be entirely certain whether to trust the warning this time. That genuine uncertainty is what makes him endlessly compelling to watch across years and feuds and championship cycles. Because if he is always lying, the character becomes entirely predictable. But if he is occasionally telling the exact truth, every single accusation he makes carries a real question inside it that demands attention and careful, honest consideration. Kevin Owens calls everyone a cheater. He is wrong most of the time. He is sometimes telling the exact truth. He is always, without any exception, worth watching closely and listening carefully. If you want more content like this, subscribe so you never miss a video. Drop a comment below letting us know which accusation on this list you think carried the most truth behind it. And if this one was worth your time, hit like on your way out.